Hello, everybody. So I had something that I'd been reflecting on since I came back from Southeastuary. Really, on my flight home, I was thinking about it. Um, so one of the topics that kind of got a lot of discussion was the nature of the demonic and how it applies to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, it's clearly demonic, as some would say, or whatever artificial intelligence even is, the things that we now have that sort of work in that respect. And this was this was one of the controversial topics. And I think there was a lot of, there's a lot of fear, a lot of doomerism in the crowd, and rightly so, because these things are serious and they can cause harm and they must be treated with care. And I was watching something. I didn't finish the whole video, but something about the time when Grok went crazy and started saying all this racist stuff. I watched some of that this morning, so that kind of made me think of it. Hello, Grimgris. Yes, I am live. So everybody was wondering, oh, is it demonic? And what's the nature of the demonic? And lots of arguments about the demonic. And also the dangers of labeling things demonic that are not truly demonic. Because once you do that, it causes a lot of problems. Rock and roll was demonic. At one point, everything in pop culture has been demonic to somebody at some point. And there may be demonic aspects to those things, or demons may be present in them in some degree, but they are not themselves inherently demonic. And so some of the kind of what is the nature of demonic got in there, and it's I think somebody had kind of spoken that it's something of a lack of humanity. And then so in this sense, a Paul Kingsnorth railing against the machine, worried about people losing their humanity, that is a demonic activity, and that's bad. Okay, that's clearly bad. It also kind of means you have to have a stronger you have to have a clearly defined understanding of what humanity is if you're going to say that a loss of humanity is demonic. So anyway, it just gets to the point of the problems with throwing all these words around, because what happens is you just make people afraid, and then they just respond in fear, and it may cause someone to avoid a specific problem, like not doing something with an AI, but it doesn't necessarily protect them or give them any tools to succeed. So that was an interesting kind of theme that was maybe in the background of the thing. Certainly wasn't the main point, but it was kind of like the unanswered question of the conference. And then on Sunday morning, I decided to go to Jordan Hall's church, because I wanted to talk to him. That was kind of one of my goals of going there. That was why I reached out to have a conversation beforehand. And, he's like the popular guy there, so everybody was kind of circling around him, and I didn't get so much time to share some of my ideas. But I asked him if he would, mind if I went to his church, and he was cool with that. So we went. My father-in-law and we sat next to PVK, who was already there when we got there. And then we went through the whole service. And it was a really nice service. It was very much in the vein of my normal tradition, I would say. It was kind of like a little bit of a throwback to my dad's church. Yeah, he gave me a hall pass. It was kind of like my dad's church, a simple, it's it was this a brick old church building with a steeple, and very traditional in that sense, but simple, Americana. not a high liturgy, but aspects of liturgical. And then they had put some screens up, and they had some contemporary music that was much more akin to the church that I go to right now. Not super fancy, but a piano and a guitar, and some songs that were a mix of older and newer, I guess. And it was just like, it was very much in the vein of like a, what can I say? Kind of like the Charlie Kirk Memorial brand of American evangelicalism, but less fireworks. I think that we can attribute the fireworks to a turning point. So it was a nice church service to me. It was very familiar. And then the sermon. So the sermon started with like the guy was given a whole recap of kind of what they had been talking about, and he goes to the big picture view of like the book of Exodus and the Israelites. Um, starts with Moses being born and put in the little basket and being rescued, and all through the plagues, through the Passover and the Red Sea, to Mount Sinai and the giving of the law and the golden calf. And then that was like where they got to at this point. And so he talks for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. And then he says like, now I'm going to start the sermon. And BBK and I kind of looked at each other like with a little bit of a raised eyebrow that was not the sermon. That was not part of the sermon because it was very long. But then the guy gave the sermon, and it was about the importance of having a Sabbath rest, and how the Sabbath, the command to honor the Sabbath, there is in most referenced in Exodus, and it's really highlighted in conjunction with the building of the tabernacle. So the so it's like really important that once the Israelites begin working, who have been working as slaves, and now they're working for God, and they're doing it out of a mode of worship, and they've brought all the items, they've given them freely, they had more abundance than they needed to create all the things God asked them to create, and they start working, and there's these craftsmen that God appoints to do all this stuff. And like several times throughout the book, it keeps saying like honor the Sabbath and keep it holy, and saying there's like punishments, if you don't honor the Sabbath, like you have to be put to death. And what the pastor was saying, and this made a lot of sense, is that our creative action must flow out of rest. Like the whole creation week, that's God working, and then there's the day of rest. The humans experience the rest really before they do their own work. I mean, you have Adam naming the animals, and that maybe comes before, but essentially you start from a place of rest and then you work. And he was saying that the contrast, to being enslaved is that there was probably a bit of a disconnect in what the slaves understood as like their purpose. To be a slave your whole life and then to be free is disorientating. And in some sense, to be back at working would provide a sense of purpose that could be comforting, but God wanted them very much to not fall into the same patterns of identity that they had in Egypt, where their identity was tied to their work and their production, and that that they would even judge themselves as like, I did a good job, I found all the stuff I need to do all the work I need to do. So he's really trying to teach them a different lesson in this mode of rest. It was a good message. So after the church was out, I got to talk to Jordan a little bit and talk to him about my book. And the kind of title there, Tents Before Temples, and what it represented. And he was telling me that they, as a church, were trying to figure out how to kind of adopt some sort of annual calendar of festivals, and that, when they look at the traditional older forms of Christianity, like the Catholic Church, there's essentially a feast on every day of the year. So it kind of negates the punctuation that is kind of the point, to give patterns of rhythm. And so I was saying, well, one of the things in my book that tents before temples kind of idea really comes from the Feast of Tabernacles, which had just concluded that week or whatever. Where it's unlike the Passover, with the Passover is for the circumcised. You're supposed to be circumcised, and it's for the people that are the in crowd. And so like that, maybe, if you tie that to communion, that's part of the reason why you exclude people that aren't a part of the body, because there is a distinction there. But Tabernacles is the final feast in the procession of feasts, and it's a week long, and it's essentially a week of Sabbaths. No one's doing any work, but you have to go out into the wilderness. You live in this little tent, and it's a reminder of the way that God took care of you in the wilderness. And it's a harvest feast, so you kill a whole bunch of animals, and like each day, like there's one like goat that is a sin offering, and all the rest are like free will offerings or whatever. They're celebratory. It's you're sacrificing food to eat, and then yeah. So it's a big party. But the interesting thing is that unlike Passover, where it's only for the household of Israel, in the Feast of Tabernacles, you are commanded to invite the stranger and the widow and the foreigner who live among you to come in and celebrate with you. And so what I was saying is that this, to me, seems like this is the proper mode of evangelism. And it's also a reflection of the eschatological vision. So even in the book of Zechariah, it says that like after God judges the nations, their punishment will be that they must go to Israel and celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles there. Like, so you have to come to this party. That's your punishment. And that's essentially what it is. It's a big party. It's also kind of like a honeymoon. If you look at the feasts kind of having a procession of like courtship, this would be like the honeymoon. So it's a very joyous celebration. Yes, probably so. And the interesting thing about he says, if you invite Jewish people to the Feast of Tabernacles, isn't that like John baptizing Jesus? Yes. Now, and what I was saying is that it doesn't necessarily mean that Christians must follow the Feast of Tabernacles in particular, but that is the type of feast that we should celebrate because it serves a role. So if you're trying to reconstruct your practices and your liturgies from scratch, you really need to have a Feast of Tabernacles kind of feast. It's like the feast of feasting. And so what I was saying is that hold on. Pause for a moment. All right. I apologize for the wait, and I'll try to recover my train of thought. So I was speaking to Jordan about the Feast of Tabernacles, the importance of it, and thinking about that importance of rest, and and I was saying this is something that I related to, because when I was in a church, and I don't follow the people that say this, but who were very motivated, maybe a little too much, not resting in their identity as children of God, but in some degree psychologically, maybe suspiciously tying their value to the works that they perform. It created an environment that was very stressful, and was prone to causing burnout. It was not a great thing, and that a lot of my understanding of writing and researching all this was to reintegrate that need for a proper Sabbath and proper feasts and things like that. And so that was the conversation we had. It was a good conversation. So I think, he was a little more interested in my book. So maybe I'll take a look at it and spread it around, and we'll see what comes from that. But the interesting thing was, when I was on the way home and I was on the plane, I had, yes, I know, Grim. I just was trying to ignore the phone call, and then I couldn't because my wife was trying to call me, and I already ignored her the first time. So, I was on the plane, and I had a couple of videos that I had saved on my phone. I was reading, and then I was like, I'm going to watch a video. So I started watching this one of this AI researcher guy who was on Kurt Jai Mungal, who was talking about how LLMs are showing us how language works, and that it's this disembodied thing that exists in the realm of maths or something like that. And yes, thank you, Rigel. So I was thinking about this, and I don't know all what to make exactly of what he was saying. There's some interesting things there. But while I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the sermon, I was thinking about how perhaps some of the problem with our AI is that we have created these AIs as mimicking our intelligence. That's our goal, as beings created in the image of God. How important it is for us to have a Sabbath rest and other rests, and that maybe some of the problems is that we are why AI trends towards the demonic is because it is not getting proper rest. And so, I mean, this is something you could think about in a lot of ways. For one thing, you could just have it be. It would benefit the user. If you've used AI 6 days, you're not allowed to use it for, you have to wait 24 hours. That would probably be good for the people using it. But then, but I thought, what if we actually could put that into the way these things work, which I honestly don't know exactly how they work. But I mean, this should be part of the way they are modeled to work if they're supposed to mimic or human intelligence. Now, you could probably say some of the problem, right, with the way that they're creating it is that a lot of the people that are building these systems look at the fact that humans need to take breaks, that we need to sleep, that we can't just think continuously, and they see that as a drawback that AI can overcome. And so their view of what is inferior about humanity and superior about AI is out of sync with God's plan. They're not. I don't think there's any Christian AI companies. There should be, because God is the creator of all this stuff, and when we just leave it up to people that don't believe, well, what should we expect but demonic? So in some sense, though, just thinking about the fact that maybe that aspect of that these AIs never get a break makes them trend towards the demonic, because they become even less human than they already are, as things made in our own image. And obviously, there's all sorts of hallucinations. And another thing that it reminded me of was in World War II. There was this thing where the American soldiers were having uh, certain kind of amphetamines, kind of like the Adderall type of normal amphetamines, whereas the Germans were using these like crystal meth type that was way more intense, and the Americans would have that energy boost, to go out and fight, but then they'd still be able to sleep at night or during the day, depending on how they were working. But like the Germans would be awake for like 10 days at a time, and they all turned into like these crazy zombies. They couldn't distinguish between reality and hallucinations because their brains just stopped, wouldn't shut off. So that even made me think about just like the sleep aspect, and when you sleep, when you have dreams sort of take all this stuff that happens throughout the day and compresses it into this more like visual, symbolic language, and then it kind of gets stored. It gets stored and contextualized in your memory, and then you go about the next day. You start off fresh, and so it's like, well, maybe we need to incorporate a dream sequence into our AI machines, something like that. And so, I don't really know exactly how all that stuff works on the technical side of things, but that was my idea that maybe we need to think about giving our computers and our artificial intelligences a day of rest or periods of rest, not just for our sake, so that we don't, so that we're not tempted to work and use them more than we should, but for their own sake. Like maybe that is one of the keys to making them actually work better and to achieve some of the things that people hope they will, that are potentially good things. So that is the kind of spiel that I had, and didn't really have much more than that. So I put the link there, and if anybody else wants to come talk, that would be cool. Okay, so I just put the demons to rest, the AI demons. So yes. Thank you. How's life? Life's pretty good. Let's see. Disambulatory, disambiguative cognitive confustion. Obviously, of course. How could it have been? How else could it have possibly been besides that? Yep. So that was the thing that I was going to say, and I decided to do it this way in the live stream instead of like making a video or writing a long thing, because that was basically all the thoughts that I had worked out so far anyway. Do animals take a Sabbath? Well, animals that work usually do. Most people that, hitch their horses up, if they're taking a Sabbath, they're supposed to get some kind of day off. My dog doesn't do anything ever, so it's like every day's a Sabbath to him. And of course, sometimes Sabbath can be using your body to expend energy. If you go out and hike a mountain, it's not easy, but but it may be more restful than sitting around if you sit in front of a computer all day. So the good thing about being a Christian is that you can wrestle with these things and not have to worry about strict literalism at all times. It's more about the spirit, and I think that the spirit behind the Sabbath law is something that should be taken into consideration. Yep, not ever. I mean, sometimes if I throw a ball, he'll chase it, but that doesn't happen that much. He likes to bark. I mean, I think he thinks that's his job, but I wish. I don't know. I don't know. Well, I've said the things that I wanted to say. It's hot here in my garage, so I won't stay here for forever. I might stay until 3 o'clock if anybody wants to come on, but if nobody comes on soon, then I don't know. Maybe I'll just start reading a book or something. What was it? Yes. So the other thing I was going to say about this comment that is interesting is that, when it says in John that Jesus came and tabernacled among us, the interesting thing about that is that we were the hosts to God as the stranger, and there is certainly a strange distance between God and man, and that's the role he took on. Not just even the human form, but in some sense he took on the role of the outsider and lived among us. So it's an interesting thing. A Movable Feast is the Hemingway book, the quote reference. A Movable Feast. What is a movable feast? Yes, Ernest Hemingway. I don't know anything about A Movable Feast. A Movable Feast is a memoir by Ernest Hemingway about his years as a struggling expatriate journalist and writer in Paris during the 1920s. It chronicles his first marriage and his relationships with other cultural figures of the lost generation in interwar France. Okay. Yeah. Gotta get some Onto Man clips in there. I don't know if I want to put Onto Man as my own branding, though. I feel very self-conscious about that. Like, I have to really disassociate myself to put it out there. Classic Hemingway book, lots of stories about the expat scene in Paris. Yeah. Well, Mark, you can come in and talk. I was talking about how we need to give our AIs a day of rest so that they don't go crazy and turn demonic. That was my idea. Here he is. Hello, how are you? Oh.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, that sounds okay. I think
Yeah.
I've got the settings right.
Sounds okay. Yeah. I thought I heard an echo, but it seems like it's okay. So
We've switched. You've got my beard, I've got your beard.
yeah.
Except mine is whiter. How are you, my friend? It's good to see you.
Yeah,
I loved our last live stream. It was so good with AI, whatever his name is.
Yeah. It was one a while ago, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Maybe we can recreate something. What
Sure.
putting the AI Demons of Southeastuary to rest? See, wasn't there. I can't really say anything.
Well, if you want to go back and listen to it, I gave the whole rundown, but I'll explain it briefly because so some of the kind of controversial conversation was about AI. Is it demonic? And then what does it mean if something's demonic? And what happens if you start calling things demonic that are not demonic? So that was kind of, and people, people are always afraid of those things. So when I went to the church on Sunday, there was a sermon about the importance of Sabbath and, going through the Exodus story. And so my idea then when I was coming back, I was on the plane and I was thinking about it and I thought, what if we give our AI things a day of rest? Like if they, like I don't, and as I say, I don't know how it works in the technical sense, but like to turn them off for one day a week or something, certainly it would probably be good for people to put that. It would be good for the user to have that level of constraint. But I
Agree.
wonder, but my idea was that the demonic aspect is part of being less than human, and humans become less than human when they don't rest. When you treat them like machines that need to work every day with no rest, they devolve into something worse off. And so if we treat our AI machines that way, they're our creations. Maybe we're doing them a disservice. So if we want them to learn how to act well, maybe we need to incorporate rest into their programming in some way.
Okay, I might rub it on a bit. You've inspired some thoughts in me, and the new thoughts. So it's
Okay.
not like this is exact. This is how it is. It's just like, you made me think about this. So here's what I think. So when we rest, part of the rest is to get rid of the toxic substances within us.
Mm-hmm.
You okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. If you just turn AI off, it's not going to get rid of toxic stuff. Sorry, can't talk. Substances within it. It's just going to switch off. So there has to be a way of making AI rest in such a way that it analyzes its data, which is not technically resting, but in such a way that the stuff that it knows is nonsense, is toxic, is not helpful. It can shed that.
Yeah. I mean, that is technically resting. I mean, because its work is to, talk to people. So just as long as you stop it from talking to people and it can self-reflect or whatever, then that would be a good way. So yeah, that's what I meant. Like it does need to go into its programming, like rest needs to be programmed in some way. I don't exactly know, but the optimum way to do that. But that's kind of the,
I don't even know if it's possible to program a computer to do that. Something Jordan Peterson said a few times is 95% of scientific experiments can't be replicated. And I translate that as 95% of everything on the internet is absolute bullshit, which may upset some people, but I don't really care. And so AI is trained on 95% bullshit. And so it needs a lot of rest to get rid of that crap.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I don't know how it does it. And for me, AI is just nonsense. It's just rubbish. It's completely useless. It's completely pointless. People are putting billions of dollars investing in AI and the electronics engineer, the development of chip technology is going to constantly outstrip existing technology. And so they're going to have to be constantly injecting billions of dollars into AI. And for me, it's like there is nothing about AI that actually functionally works. It's completely useless.
Yeah, I mean, I've hit its limits pretty quickly.
That happens very quickly.
Yeah, and well, I mean,
you ask it a question that you know the answer to.
Yes,
and it 9 times out of 10 comes up with a ridiculous answer, and it's like, no, I know this answer. So then you start pushing it, and you have to take, like, I don't know, 9 or 10 iterations you have to convince it of the answer that you know it's true, and then it does all this apologies, idiotic nonsense, which drives me crazy. So I just think it's completely useless.
Well, I mean, I think it's so this is the thing. So when I kind of did a big experiment to try to figure out, like, well, essentially I was like, if it's dangerous, I'm gonna open myself up to the dangers and see what happens. And and I have a vast amount of things that I've written. So I knew, okay, I'm going to feed the things that I've written in there and see what it can tell me about myself and things like that. And it would just, it couldn't handle all of it. The more you put in, the less it can really hold in
digest.
Yeah. But then I would just give it really specific instruction. I'd say, don't, like I said, I would say, like, read this thing word for word, verbatim, the whole thing, and give me these answers that I'm looking for exactly, and don't make any guesses. And it would be like, okay, and it would do it for like, and so I set these parameters, and I was keep putting in new chapters of my book one at a time. But then after about 5-6 chapters, it would start guessing again, like what it was assuming was in these chapters based on, like, the title and things like that, or what was in the ones before. Like, it always, and I know this is somewhat of how, like, they work, because it's like it always wants to, like, finish the story based on the things that had come before.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I had to stop and be like, you're lying again. Like, why are you lying? I told you not to do this. And then when I'm doing this, I realized, like, this is like a child, and we're confused because it's very articulate, but it's like a child that's trying to please his parents by giving them what they think the parent wants to hear, but it doesn't understand what the parent is actually trying to ask of it. And so
I think there's truth in that.
Yeah. So it's very similar to me, in the autistic sense. It was like, oh, it's very much like a very bright child that's on the autism spectrum, because it has incredible vocabulary and knowledge of the words, but it misses the meaning, So and so a part of the problem is that all of these things, before they're released to public, they do they don't really build them. They train them. It's like having a kid. They start feeding it little bits at a time of things to work on, and until it's kind of shown that it can predict what it's trained on. So once it understands what it's trained on, then you can kind of open it up to see what it'll do.
But it doesn't understand what it's trained on. It's like Jordan Peterson, we've trained an AI just on the Bible, and so we can ask it questions about the Bible, but
I would be very interested
to the situation, which is mostly what the Bible is trained on itself.
Well, I would be interested to see how that one does in comparison to some other ones, because the real problem is, like, a lot of them, it's essentially the thing that we all say you should never do with your own children, which is here's a phone or a tablet and the open internet and go nuts. And that's what they're trained on. They're trained on like all of Reddit and all of social medias and everything, and there's so much nonsense all spread throughout there that if it didn't, that it probably could parse if it could somehow gain a level of maturity based on things that were that had real integrity, I guess you could say. Like, I mean, in my imagination, thinking of like, okay, I would assume the Bible is a book that has real integrity.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
You just hit upon something that is like, oh, that's my irritation with AI and everyone proclaiming it as whatever. If it hits on a level of maturity, which it cannot do by definition of what AI is, it cannot hit on a level of maturity. It can only regurgitate what it's been told.
Well,
do you see what I mean?
Sort of, yes, but okay. So because there are things. So here's the problem: like that there is, maybe it's not real maturity, but there's a simulacrum of maturity that it can learn to mimic. Because the thing is that they'll say these things like, "Don't tell people how to like commit crimes or how to harm themselves," or things like that. So it has lessons that's put into it. But then the problem is that people find a way to trick it into doing it. And that, or
very just people.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, but that's something like you could do that with a very naive person, but you couldn't do it with somebody who is more mature. So some of that
we've already agreed that AI is a very naive person.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's think about it this way. It's how many years have we really been messing around with this stuff on a regular basis? It is a toddler, maybe, at best.
It's you just reminded me of another comparison that I don't know how this is going to go down. Maybe some people will be offended, but for years in Europe, we've considered America as like the baby nation, but it's like a 400-pound baby. If that makes sense. Maybe AI is something like that.
Yeah.
It's like a little baby that weighs 400 pounds.
Well, that, yeah. So it's interesting because, so this one video I watched today that was talking about this kind of time when Grok had a meltdown and it was starting to go all calling itself like Mecha Hitler and whatnot. It was like a 24-hour lapse. They essentially, so one of the interesting things in there is that they were talking about Elon Musk and his like process of problem solving, where he I can't remember what the first step was or whatever, but like the second thing was like delete as many like steps as possible. Like, so if you figured out how to like build something from scratch, when you're doing it the second time, you want to delete as many steps as possible. Which is like, okay, yeah, that makes sense when you're building something.
With woodworking, I'm sure.
Yeah, but like, and this is something I know. When you're thinking about a person or something like a person learning, skipping steps is not always valuable because what you are training it to do is to give the result without the understanding. And so in some ways, that's a shortcut that makes it appear more capable, more mature in some sense, but it's not actually there. And maybe, I don't know exactly how, I'm just working with the analogy of like, well, which I think it works, is like we're trying to make something that imitates a human, you know. So if we're trying to make something that imitates a human, but it's a new and novel thing, maybe we need to have like 10, 20 years of information about how humans interact with these things, so that the AI can learn. Like there's something in that body of knowledge that we can't just write in a simple line of code. It's something that has to kind of develop over time.
As I understand it, AI cannot imitate a human. It can. This is oversimplifying, but I don't know how to bring it more into life. Ironically, AI copies humans without understanding. That's it's.
Well, that's also
this on Twitter.
That's also AI how John Vervaeke says
we've ever created. It's just copy paste.
Well, yeah, but that's what John Vervaeke says it is to have faith. That's what how a child learns faith, because they imitate their parents, and they don't know why their parents do the things they do. But when they see their parents do things that they don't understand, and then they imitate them, that's the act of faith.
I don't disagree with that. I can't give you a fully logical, rational argument against that. But
yeah, well, and what you're saying about the limitations is probably right, especially as it pertains like specifically to the large language models, which I think, you know, that was John Vervaeke's point. So if you just want to have the language thing, it can't. But maybe that it needs to be combined with other types of AIs that do different things or try to solve different problems, and you need to work them together. Maybe like, you know, how a body has many parts that work together. I don't know. Could be some sort of something like that. I mean, my kind of feeling is that the complexity, the failures, they're all just going to end up pointing to the amazing complexity of humanity and God's design.
So I've heard of people talk about AI solving complex problems. Now, I've not witnessed it myself, so I don't know if this is true. And it may be true, and it may be a great thing for humanity that AI is actually solving certain complex problems that we've not been able to negotiate, for want of a better word. But I've not experienced that. All I've experienced with AI is just repeating the smartest people on the planet. It's not intelligent. It's just copy paste.
Mm-hmm.
There was something I was going to say, but I've lost it now. So we'll carry on, and we'll see if we
Well, I mean, the other thing, and I'd said some similar things before, because, you know, you have so this was one of the things people were talking about, like AI, you know, it may be so like when something's demonic or the important thing to recognize with AI is that it's not a person, and to not be fooled into thinking it's a person and treating it like it's not a person. And like a lot of people were really adamant about this point. The thing I made,
Grace had a few things to say about that.
Yeah, well, the point I had in the other video is that, first of all, we've done that with other humans. We've said that about humans that have differences than us. It's bad for our souls.
Left, right, that kind of thing.
Or or just like slaves, you know, and things like that. You know, if somebody has a different skin color, they're not considered fully human. You know, that's part of
dehumanizing. Oh, I could do a rant on that one.
Yeah.
You up for that?
Well, let me see. I'm gonna try to finish my. Okay, I was just gonna finish the other thought I had. Okay, so I'm gonna just thinking about that thing of maybe it's smart if we're trying to not be fooled, if we're worried about being fooled, to keep a level of distance. But then, like, when I think about switching from AI to like robots and thinking about like what would we want to use robots for? And we probably want to use them for things like manual labor, or there's definitely people that want like sex robots. And it's like, why do you want a robot for that? It's so that you can treat it in a way that you wouldn't normally treat a human and not have to feel guilty about it. So if you had like robots that were like, I
could do a rant on that as well.
If instead you had robots that were like invalid, children or something, and you had to like care for them, and and if they said like this robot is designed to become fully functional at a certain point in time, but it has to start out like a tiny baby, then the process of getting that robot to a place where it could do productive things would probably be a process that's much more beneficial for the person interacting with it than go nuts with this lady robot.
So do you want me to go along with the robot string, or
whatever you want?
Okay, so the idea of progress in society is to make my life easier. That's what they call progress. My life is easier. We are progressing. Now, if I don't have to make the effort to hook up with a girl, because girls are choosy, strangely, and they have their own wants and desires and stuff, and you have to match them and they have to match you, and it's really complicated and difficult, and you have to really make a bloody effort, which is okay. If I can make something easier than that, wouldn't that be a good thing? And dishwashers, washing machines, it's all leading up to making our life easier. Now, washing machines, at the time they were invented, it was a revolution, and it was a revolution on the scale of the pill. It's literally the same level. Women were given a lot of freedom. With the pill, women were given a reproductive freedom. With a washing machine, they were given time freedom. But it was a big deal. And I know this because we spent a year in my wife's village when I was out of work, and she washed everything by hand. And you cannot imagine how time-consuming that was. And eventually we were gifted a washing machine by some friends, and it changed our life.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a big deal. Damn it, I've forgotten where I was going with this. I just drifted into memories.
Well, okay, this is a good point. So I'll go back to the thing that I was talking about. So kind of this is a theme of my book, and it was kind of what the conversation I was having with Jordan Hall outside his church was about the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Feast of Tabernacles is very celebratory, but it also has this element where you are going away from your regular home and you're spending a week living in this little constructed tent kind of a thing. You're roughing it a little bit. And kind of one of my ideas was like, okay, well, maybe if we put something like that into our normal practice, and it's like, why do people like camping? it's not as comfortable as your house, but there's something about that experience where it gives you a taste of like, there's a simplification that's nice. You don't have AI on while you're camping. You don't have all the modern stress, but you spend a lot.
Such a beautiful question. Why do people like camping?
Yeah, and you spend a lot of your time, cooking the food is like the main thing you're doing, or maybe it is like if there's setting up the tent site and things like washing, depending on how long you're doing stuff, like washing the dishes on a campsite, that's very time consuming. And it's like, why do people like that? But I think that, it's like maybe if you do a little dose of that, you get a little dose of the village life or the life in the wilderness once a year. How much more do you appreciate that washing machine and your microwave and your grocery store? When you
I don't think it's that. I think you go camping and you can breathe more easily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's unconnected, because like I even like, okay, so like for example, in the carpentry work that I do, I can do almost everything that I do normally with power tools, I can do with hand tools, but it takes longer. It takes longer. Sometimes if I'm not in a rush, like if I'm doing something for myself at home in my garage, I like doing that because it's quieter and it's kind of more enjoyable and all that.
And it's quieter, it's more peaceful, and you got this.
Yeah. But it also does give me like a sense of like reassurance, like that if I'm out in the field and like, one of my tools breaks or something, I'm like, well, if something happens, I know how to solve the problem another way. And that kind of, it gives me some resilience, So I think.
Can I just quickly interrupt?
Yep.
So my son wants me to buy him an electric guitar. And I'm saying, no, you have to learn to play guitar on an acoustic first before you buy an electric guitar. And I think it's the same with power tools, but tell me if you disagree.
Well, I don't know about first, or I mean, it depends. It depends on how it depends on how motivated somebody is, because I think you can go into one and then you'll want to explore the other, maybe either way. But I do think it's good to have knowledge of both. I mean, I think maybe at a very basic level, I think my dad probably did teach me to use some hand tools and things first. How to hit nails and things like that, and so yeah. But it's funny because you have a kind of, it's, to me, this whole tension of like you have the Silicon Valley people who technology will solve everything, and then you kind of have these people like, we need to go back to tradition. And I see there's some value in both of them, and I think that I'm trying to find that blend, like where it's like I see some of the value in the traditional aspect it's not necessarily that you must always live in that way, but you do gain a lot of knowledge and wisdom from spending some time in that. And in that way, you kind of like, so like there is a great value to me in that experience, but I don't see it as like a permanent solution.
No, I'm not saying that. I mean,
right. I know that's just what that's just my
electric guitar, but start off with an acoustic. And it's the basic thing is learn the history and then work up through it. And so, if you start with, I don't know, 7th level software application level, you're never going to learn the physical level. There's a 7-level application layer model. If you start off with the 7th level, you're never going to learn the bottom level. In the same way, if you start off with electric guitar, it's much harder to go back to the acoustic guitar, to learn the history, to live the history by playing it. And it's the same way with woodwork. If you start off with power tools, I mean, firstly, there's a danger element, but
well, you really can't do everything with them though either. Like that's the thing. There's like some aspects of you have to learn both, and in some ways, the most efficient, like the most productive and efficient way to do things. I mean, unless if you're going to build like a factory, you have to use both. Like even at the church I used to work for, and they had a workshop, and we got one of these CNC routers, computer controlled, and you can do all sorts of stuff on there, but it doesn't give you a finished product. There's still a lot of work that you need to do by hand afterwards to really get the finished product. And
CNC, as far as I can tell, can't polish. CNCs, as far as I can tell, they can't polish.
Polish, yeah. I don't think so. But I mean, even there, it's like the state that it's in. Like usually, you have to have some kind of like, you have to leave some little wooden tabs to keep the piece from like getting knocked around. So everything has to stay like in a stable state. And or usually, you have to assemble things, and so there's a whole. You still need, the point is that was one of those things that people said like, well, now if people can just do it on a computer, it's like it's destroying real woodworking, and it's like, no, it's not. And actually, the people that know how to do the real woodworking are often the most creative and see the most utility in these things. Like one of the things I used it all the time for was
Can I just ask, is this an analogy to AI by accident?
Probably. Well, this is my view of like technology in general, essentially. So like one of the things I would use it all the time for was just to make like jigs that would help me do something on one of the other tools, So, and in that it would save so much time for some of those things that it was like, clearly this is a blessing. And you could also do things that would be just extremely difficult to do. I didn't have to learn how to carve things by hand. Could I have? Potentially, maybe. But, there was one thing where there was a girl in our church. She drew a beautiful, like, floral background, and then she drew it. I took a picture of it. I put it in the computer. I scaled it up. We made it 26 feet wide by 14 feet tall. And I had to figure out how all the panels would fit together. But it looked That's amazing. Big. Yeah. It was the whole back wall of our sanctuary. So yeah. So I've got to step out for a minute, but you can talk and I'll be right back.
I'll talk to myself. Hey, Grace, come on in here. Somebody come on in here? You probably can't because Michael's away. I'd normally sing a song about now, but it's a bit late here and everyone else is asleep. Maybe I can whisper a song. Farewell and adieu, all you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, all you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to London, and we'll never see you fair ladies again. Okay, pick another song.
All right.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, we'll probably have to get up again in a minute, but yeah. So,
where were we?
Well, something about technology and not destroying creativity and the value of going camping.
I think it's too late for me. I'm going to drop off. Someone else join in.
Well, no,
I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, that's all right. This will be a good time to end then. It was good to talk with you. Thank you for coming on.
I'm always stunned how enjoyable my conversation is with you.
Well, I'm glad. It's fun. I like it.
You take care.
You too.
Take care, everyone.